All right, so let's take a moment to talk about your project. This is Project 5, a revisit of Project 3 that's going to be noticeably more complex and noticeably more difficult. This is why I'm giving you all 3 weeks to work on this, plus an additional day due to the AWS outage. So let's begin by opening up items.json here. So there are two parts to this JSON file. We have info and we have item data. Info is just a series of strings that explains what's going on in here. You can read this yourself. You could pause the video and see what this all says. But long story short, you can ignore info in your code. I just need you to read this yourself. Your code is only going to interact with item data, which, as you can see, contains a list of dictionaries. Each dictionary contains information for an item's type, name, weight, and value. There are 9 items in total, spread across 3 categories. You can add more items if you want. You can add more categories if you want. You can do anything that you want, really, with these dictionaries, as long as they all follow the same type, name, weight, value pattern. And of course, comma separate each of them. But this JSON file is really simple. It is nothing too complex. And I know I am using Python terminology with lists and dictionaries. That's not truly what's going on here in a JSON file, but it is close enough as far as how it appears in Python. So again, you will only work with item data. Now, let's open up item.json. So here in item.json, this is a very simple class. This is about as dirt simple as it gets. So we have a class called item, and it has a dunder init, and it has a dunder string. We'll get an explanation of what this means in class. So, in dunder init, we take a reference to self, we take type, which is a string, we take name, which is also a string, we take weight, which is a float, we take value, which is an int. Don't worry about this colon followed by a data type information here. This is what we call type hints. This doesn't affect your code in any way. It just gives the user and the IDE something to read as far as what kind of data is wanted. And so we just load the data supplied by our parameter list into an object of our class, and then we set quantity to 0. Then in our dunder string, just takes a reference to self, and it returns a string. That's what this arrow means. The arrow after the parameter list, you can read as returns a, or returns an, and then the data type. So def dunder string returns string. Creates a message that contains self.name, self.quantity, self.type, self.weight, and self.value. Pardon me. It then returns message. This is about as simple as a class can possibly get. So let's look in main.json. Or not main.json, excuse me, main.py. So here's where the main project write-up is going to be. As always, you are presented with a series of steps that you're going to follow. These are the overarching steps. You're reading data from a JSON file. You're constructing a player inventory with some basic features, and you are exporting the inventory to a second JSON file. So we're reading a list of items in, and we are writing a complete inventory out. So in this file, or in this zip folder, sorry, you are going to find 4 files. This one, main.py, item.py, that's your item class, inventory.py, which is where the majority of your work is going to be, and items.json. By the time you are done, you will have a second JSON file. You can call it whatever you want. So we're going to begin by importing the inventory class from inventory.py. You'll notice we're not importing item. That's because inventory is going to import JSON and it's going to import item. So by importing inventory, we already have access to both of those here. Now in main, remember that you need to remove pass when you get started. This piece of code is used to immediately break out of a function. It's used when a function is just a placeholder, or when a class is just a placeholder. You're creating an inventory object, giving it a max carry weight starting amount of gold, and this is just a single line. Then we create a menu with the following options. You're going to use Project 4 to help you structure this. It's going to be a do-while loop with a match case, just like before. You have a number of options, each of these calling the methods of your inventory. So you can add items, drop items, buy items, sell items, use a consumable, list items in a given category or list all of them, show the complete inventory, including maximum carry weight, current carry weight, and gold, and export to a JSON file and exit. So with all that out of the way, you will create this. This will be a fairly simple menu structure. Where your code becomes most complex, where you will be doing the bulk of your work, is here in inventory.py. First thing to note, here at the top, there's a comment that says all user input is taken in main.py. You will do all of your input calls there. Any input calls here, I will mark the function wrong. So we start by importing JSON and everything from item.py. And here's some preamble. Some of these functions are already done for you. There's like 2 or 3 that are already taken care of. The rest you will do yourself. So you're getting roughly the same workload as the last project, just with more layers of complexity. Thankfully, the data structure you're going to be working with is much simpler. You have a class that contains a list of dictionaries as opposed to a dictionary that contains several objects, including a list of dictionaries. That was as complicated of a data structure as I'm going to give you in this course. So, beginning with read items, this is the first function you're going to do yourself. It takes a string for the file path and it returns a list. This list is going to be a list of a list of items, a list of item objects. So, notice the use of future tense in this comment. If you're confused as to which of these you need to complete, this is one of your hints. First off, you will notice that there is only pass, just like there has been in the past. But also, any descriptions written in future tense are functions that you need to complete. So this function will create a list of item objects by reading data from items.json. You need to read items.json to know how the data is structured and how to reference it. You cannot do this function without reading items.json. Second function, This one is used to print an error if the wrong type of data is entered. You're going to use this throughout several functions. I already did this one for you, but let's look at it. This is called bad type. It takes an object that could be anything, and it takes T, which is a type. It also returns a Boolean. So, if not, is instance. So, is instance checks if object's type and the type specified are the same. Returns true if they do, false if they don't. We're negating this. So we're saying if is instance object T is false, then we print error expected T got type of object. So if we hand a string over to object, but we're expecting an integer, this will read error expected class integer, class int, got class string. And then we return true. So if this is a bad type, if our type is wrong, we return true. If it's not, we return false. Function 3. This function will return true if index is no less than 0 and no greater or equal to list size. In other words, it takes an index, which is an integer. It takes a list size, which is also an integer. And this determines if you are in bounds. Alright, now we get into our class. This is where the bulk of the work is going to be. These two functions that you have to do up here between lines 11 and 27, these are not going to be that long. However, all the methods in inventory, these are quite lengthy. So, your parameters for dunder init. This is a very long description for your dunder init method, but we need it to be. So, your parameters, file path, which is a string, max weight, which is a float, gold, which is an int. So this is going to take these three parameters and it's going to generate the following members. Items, which is a list of item objects. Current weight, which is a float. This is initially set to 0. Max weight, also a float, initially set to the parameter supplied. Gold, an integer, set to the parameter supplied. Notice that you're going to need to use the read file or read items function here. Next up, add item. It takes an index and a quantity. And these next four functions are going to follow very similar patterns. You're going to notice a lot of repetition. So if you can get these use cases down in one of these, you can fly through it in the other three. And there you go. You've already done like half the project. So let's take a look at those use cases for this function. So our first use case is the event that index or quantity. I know that says quality. That's just a typo on my part. Is not an integer. In that case, we throw an error. And anytime we throw an error, the function is over and we return back to main. Use case number 2, quantity is negative. There are a couple ways we can fix this. We could throw an error. That would be an option. But I want you to make it positive. Use case number 3 is that index is -1. -1 is our indicator for we want to add gold. Same thing for removing gold in the next function. Use case number 4, index is out of bounds. In that case, we have an error. We can't do anything with that. Comment here, note that an index of -1 is valid, but out of bounds. You need to structure your code to account for that. In other words, you need to make sure that this doesn't get tripped before this has had a chance to do its thing. Make sure that use case number 3 gets priority. Once everything is done, then we add the specified number of the specified item to our inventory. Next, remove item. This has a lot of the same use cases. We check for index or quantity, not quality. Quantity being the right type. Quantity is negative, make it positive. Quantity is greater than the amount in the inventory, then we want to set it to however much we have. So if we want to remove 10 med kits from our inventory, but we only have 3, then we set the quantity to 3. This is called clamping. If index is -1, then we remove gold. But we have to make sure that we do not have our gold fall into the negatives. How you do that, you'll figure that out on your own. And lastly, if index is out of bounds, that's an error. If all that goes through, then we remove the specified number of the specified item. Next is buying and selling. Same thing, we have index and quantity. If index or quantity are out of bounds, error. If quantity is negative, make it positive. And if index is out of bounds, error. Notice that we don't care about our index being -1 here, because we can't really buy and sell money. Once all the above are done, then we purchase, or we attempt to purchase, the amount of items. Items are bought at 50% above their value. So if an item is worth 50 gold, then we can buy it for 75. If there's enough gold to purchase the items, then we purchase the items. If not, then that's another error we need to account for. Next, selling the items. Similar use cases. Index or quality is not an integer, that's an error. Quantity is negative, make it positive. Quantity is greater than the amount that we have. We need to clamp that amount. Index out of bounds, that's an error. And in the event that there are 0 of the desired item in the inventory, that is yet another error. Once we've gone through all that, then we sell the items that we want to sell. Items are sold at half of their value. So if an item is worth 50 gold, it's sold at 25. And in this case, we remove the items and add the money. Now, using a consumable takes only the index. Our use cases. Index is not an integer. Error. Index is out of bounds. Error. There are 0 of the desired item in the inventory. Another error. And the item at the given index is not a consumable. You guessed it. That's another error. And once that's done, we are going to remove 1 of the desired items from the inventory. That's all we're going to do. We're not going to worry about what it does. We're just going to have the most basic functionality of we've used the item, it needs to go away. Moving on to list items. This takes 1 parameter. This is category, which is a string. And this doesn't have any use cases. If there is a match for Item types, that is, if category matches an item's type, then that item will be shown. If it does not, then it won't. On the other hand, if an empty string is supplied, if this is left blank, then every item will be shown. Next up is dictify, as in it turns it into a dictionary. This is done for you, but just to explain it, it has a boolean for show all, and if this is true, then it's going to show everything. Otherwise, it's only going to show the items that have a value of 0, a value that is not 0. Sorry. So, dictify takes show all. If show all is true, then every item is put into the dictionary. Otherwise, only items with a value greater than 0 are put in. And this takes everything. The current weight, max weight, gold, every item, puts it all into this dictionary called content, which is then returned at the end. Last two. First we have export. You have done this one already. This is basically the same as Project 4. It takes show all, which does the same thing here because you're going to feed this into dictify. And all this does is export as a JSON file. And then the last function, the last method, is your dunder string. This is just a two-string method. We'll talk about how to do these in class pretty extensively. They're pretty self-explanatory. You just want to show all the information. All right. That is your project. This is Project 5. This is a component of your final project, and it is the hardest one you've done so far by quite a margin. Give yourself plenty of time. Do not procrastinate. Do not wait until a few days before the project is due to get started. This happens too much, and I see emails coming in on the weekend of, hey, I'm struggling, can you help me? No, I can't. Once you get right up against the deadline, I can't help you anymore. This is why there's that 3-day cutoff period for draft submissions. Because that is the smallest amount of time where I will be able to help you. Anything beyond that, it becomes more and more limited. So make sure to give yourself plenty of time. You have 3 weeks to do this. There are 2 completely separate files to work with. And up until now, you have been pair programming where you have a coder and a spotter. This time around, it is not a bad idea for one of you to take main and the other to take inventory. So make sure you get started on this as soon as possible, especially since I won't be available to help you the last week that the project is due. I will try to be, but I cannot make any promises because I will be recovering from surgery. So please, please, please give yourself plenty of time to work on this. Ask questions, get clarification. I will do everything I can to help you. But for now, that's all I got. I'll see y'all in class.